So, dear all, today is the sixth webinar of our great joint event when Hawaii TESOL, our sister affiliate, was providing webinars for TESOL Ukraine. You know that we started in just after the very beginning of war, and during all this time our sister affiliate supported us. So now I give floor to Elena Ilyanka, TESOL Ukraine president, to introduce our today's speaker.
Thank you, Marina. But I think we all know many TESOL Ukraine members all around the country know Sally Luzerne very well, and she doesn't need any introduction. But I would like to tell again that to highlight again that we are so much grateful to TESOL Hawaii and personally to Sally for the solidarity and support for all English teachers in Ukraine, in particular TESOL Ukraine Association members, for giving us this opportunity to feel your support during this webinar, this series of webinars, to share when they share their experience, helped us. We all have an opportunity to understand in more detail, to have a more nuanced understanding of many things which are common for our teaching practices. And again, we are so much thankful to Sally for her continuous many years work as our partner in TESOL Hawaii and intermediate person who has made our cooperation so our partnership so diverse, intensive, interesting, and of course it is your initiative that this series of webinars happened. Thank you for all your work, for the work you are doing for TESOL Ukraine teachers, and for your work with organization of this series of webinars. You are always our friend, colleague, and beloved person for Ukraine. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Elena and Marina, for that introduction. I'm happy to be here. Thank you all for coming today. Can you hear me all right?
Yes, yes.
Yes, we can hear you. Thank you.
Okay, because I'm getting a message here that my connection's unstable and some of your speech is a little warped, I guess I would say. But as long as you can hear me, that's great. So let's begin. Okay, everybody can see the slides. Okay, today I would like to share some ideas with you for using biographies in language teaching. And so I'm titling this presentation, Engaging Language Learners with Biography-Based Lessons, Units, and Courses. So as Lena said, this is part of Hawaii TESOL's outreach to TESOL Ukraine. So I'm calling today's webinar Hawaii TESOL BOGO webinar. Are you familiar with that acronym? No? It's very commonly used in the United States, especially in what we call drugstores, even though they sell many other things, and supermarkets. So BOGO means buy one, get one. It can be buy one, get one free, or buy one, get one half price. So today's webinar is your Hawaii TESOL BOGO webinar. You have my full name and that email address here, and I hope you will feel free to contact me if you have, if there's anything you'd like me to send you, or if you have questions about this presentation. But I will say the presentation is in 3 parts, or there are 3 parts to it, and please feel free to stop and ask me questions after each part so that we don't forget those items. So I'm going to start today with enhancing standalone biographical texts, and then move on to building content-based units of instruction around biographies. And finally, I'll talk very briefly about designing a course around biography-based units. Now, this talk is based on an article that I wrote with Jean Kirschman for the English Teaching Forum. And you have the link here. It should be a hyperlink. And so between the presentation that Marina will post and that article, you probably don't need to take notes because, as I said, it follows the article very closely. So I like to use biographies in my teaching. Why? Well, I think biographies are naturally suited for language learning. Biographies are a form of story and storytelling. People or characters, as you know, and their lives are at the center of a biography. And these stories can be very memorable. They can teach us something, they can inspire us, they can provoke, they can entertain readers and listeners. And another reason that I think they're good for language learning is that they are typically organized in transparent sections. I mean, not always, but with a biographical text and not too long text, there are sections on birth and childhood, usually education, young adulthood, overcoming obstacles, career path, personal life, and legacy. As a result, our students exert little cognitive energy trying to figure out the organization. And they can devote more attention to the content and language of the biography. Also, each new experience with the biographical text provides for recycling language. So if you use several biographical texts, students are going to be meeting with the same high frequency expressions and vocabulary that are associated with life stories. And if you delve into the biography more, they can learn or be introduced to a lot of content-specific vocabulary and discourse patterns. And I'll show you more about that later. But the result is both language-focused learning and fluency development. Okay, now using biographies in the language classes is not a new concept. I'll go back to this first slide and you'll see 3 books there. that I just pulled off my bookshelf as I was putting this presentation together. And one, that first one on the left is biographies of Black Americans. The one in the middle, famous women, biographies on cards or cue cards, and the other is modern American profiles, biographies of Americans. So this concept of using biographies is not necessarily new, but what I've usually found is that biographies are usually used as reading passages. Okay, I don't know why there's little red marks on my slides, but can you see those? It's okay, I guess they don't really blot out anything. So my experience with biographies, especially in ELT textbooks, is that they are formatted with pre-reading questions. There's the biography, post-reading comprehension questions, and maybe vocabulary exercises, and maybe prompts for writing or discussion. Now, there's nothing wrong with that, but it does remind me of prep for a reading test or reading component on TOEFL or IELTS. With little effort, we can make a biographical text much more engaging, foster deeper understanding of the text, and provide lots of language practice with speaking, listening, and writing, in addition to reading. So what I would like to do in this first section is to share some ideas for taking a biographical text, whether it's in your textbook or whether it's something you bring into class from a magazine or from the internet, and enhancing it with some activities that provide this practice in skills other than reading. Reading, yes, but other skills as well. So I'm going to show you four, excuse me, I missed a slide. I'm going to go over 4 activities that are listening speaking activities and help students interact with biographical texts. Now, I wouldn't do all 4 activities. I'd choose one for a biographical text, but I'll go through all 4 with you. Okay, the first one is a mini lecture. So with the mini lecture, the teacher previews the biography, feels comfortable with it because the teacher is not going to read it. The teacher is going to deliver it as a lecture, like students would hear in other classes. The teacher asks the students to label 3 columns on a piece of paper. The headings of those columns should be date, event, and importance. The teacher then gives the lecture. Again, you're not reading the biography, you're just retelling it. And it doesn't have to be the exact wording of what's in the reading. You just want to make sure you get the main ideas of it. Students fill in the columns. So it's a note-taking activity. After they do this, they can then compare their notes with a classmate. And depending on the level of your student, you might want to deliver that lecture again. And then you have the students read the biography. Afterwards, you have a whole group discussion to debrief the students. So look at your notes, look at the biography. What were you missing? Why do you think you missed that? What was hard to hear? So a debriefing section, trying to figure out if students had missed major points of the lecture. Why? What happened there with the listening process? Okay. Now, I realize I forgot to mention a caveat here. And that caveat is I wrote these materials long before COVID, long before the pandemic. And so as I wrote the materials, I was thinking of face-to-face classes. I think this one could work in an online class. And we're going to see if the next one would work in an online class, but I realized some of them would be a bit problematic or need adaptation when teaching online. But let's hope that soon we'll all be back face-to-face with our students. Okay, so that's activity 1, the mini lecture. We're going to go now to activity 2, and activity 2 I call building the biography. And let's do this, or let's try it. So we're going to do the activity building the biography. And this biography is about Frank Lloyd Wright. Anybody familiar with Frank Lloyd Wright?
No, I,
No?
for example, have never heard.
Okay, I was just checking the chat box.
An architect.
All of you who said hello, hello to you. I just heard someone say he's an architect. Okay, bingo. And what does an architect do?
Builds.
Builds architecture.
Builds
Designs.
buildings.
Yes.
Builds buildings. Okay, great. So you see one of the buildings. Oh, why is my cursor doing this? I guess I'm the one putting red marks on my slides. Yes, an architect builds buildings. Frank Lloyd Wright is an architect, and that's one of the buildings he built called Falling Water. Frank Lloyd Wright is from Wisconsin. Can anyone tell us anything about Wisconsin?
You live there.
Okay. I was born and raised in Wisconsin, and I left Wisconsin for a very long time, and I taught in other countries, including Ukraine, and I lived in Hawaii for a very long time. I'm back in Wisconsin now. Where is Wisconsin? Any idea?
It's north of the United States, and the capital is Madison.
Very good, thank you. I asked this because a lot of people don't know where Wisconsin is. They go from coast to coast, they fly over Wisconsin. Wisconsin is part of the American Midwest, surrounded by the Lake Michigan, Lake Superior. So yes, anyway, so this biography is about Frank Lloyd Wright, an architect from Wisconsin. Now, I'm going to read the biography to you as the teacher, and I'm going to ask you to try to experience this. Imagine you're in the classroom. I'm going to ask you not to take notes this time. This is not a note-taking activity. So just listen, okay? Just think about Frank Lloyd Wright and listen to this short biography. All right. Frank Lloyd Wright was a famous American architect, which we already know. Most of his buildings are in the United States. However, his ideas about building design spread around the world. Wright was born in 1867 in Wisconsin. His father was a church leader and musician. His mother was a teacher. He had 2 younger sisters. Childhood experiences were important to Wright. His mother gave him some building blocks to play with when he was young. His family moved often, but he spent summers in Wisconsin. He loved the Wisconsin countryside. Those building blocks and the Wisconsin countryside helped Wright think about beautiful building design. Wright attended high school and university in Madison, Wisconsin, but he did not graduate. During high school, his parents divorced and his father left the family. Wright dropped out of school to work, help his family, and save money for college. In one job, he helped an architect build a small, beautiful church and decided to become an architect. In 1887, he moved to Chicago to look for work. In 1893, Wright started his own architecture business. He designed private homes and public buildings. His home designs were low, like the flat Wisconsin countryside. They also had open space, like the Wisconsin countryside, and lots of light. One of Wright's most famous buildings was the Imperial Hotel in Tokyo, Japan. It survived a terrible earthquake in 1923. It was one of the few buildings that was left remaining after the Great Tokyo earthquake. Today, Wright's most famous building may be the Guggenheim Museum in New York City. Wright was still designing buildings when he was 80 years old. Frank Lloyd Wright died in 1959. He designed over 1,000 buildings. They fit into the nature around them. Today, young architects continue to study Wright's ideas and his buildings. Okay, here's what we're going to try to do next. We're going to try to reconstruct the biography. We're going to try to build the biography like an architect. And in a minute, Marina is going to put you into breakout rooms.
I also have already put the points, the keywords into the chat. And please take pictures of them in case you don't see them when you are in a breakout room. Or,
No, go ahead, Marina.
Yeah. Or we can share the keywords on the screen, and you can take a picture of them. Yeah.
Okay, so as I said, I created these for face-to-face classes, but I thought we'll try it. I mean, most of you are teaching online. Let's try this and see if it works online. And Marina, excuse me, has agreed to help me here.
Yeah. So
okay.
let's share first. So first, here are keywords. Yeah.
Okay. Here are the keywords. So if you want to take a picture of those, and here's what you're going to do. You're going to, in small groups. Now, if you do this in class, you can do it with pairs, you can do it with small groups, and give your students some keywords from the biography and ask them to work as a group to try to reconstruct the biography. Now, it's not important that you have every detail. It's not important that you have the exact wording, but you want to try to get the main gist of the story. So when you go into your breakout rooms, I'm going to ask you to try to, we'll give you maybe 3 to 5 minutes to try to reconstruct as much of the biography as you can. Before you do that, I'd like you to take no more than 30 seconds. I'd like you to find out when your group mates' birthdays are. I mean, a birthday is a big part of a biography, obviously. So you can my birthday is November 21st, or I was born on November 21st. You don't have to give the year. You don't have to give any years, just the date. Do that very quickly, please. Why? Because the person who has the earliest birthday, the January birthday, should start the reconstruction. The person with the next birthday should continue the reconstruction and keep going around through birthdays as many times as you need to try to reconstruct this biography. Any questions? Questions? Okay, well then I think Marina, we're ready. You have about 5 minutes. Remember the birthday part, and then using the keywords to try to reconstruct as much as you can together. Okay, Marina's going to put you in breakout rooms.
Yeah, and I don't know why, but now I have a different idea for the rooms. Yeah, so okay, I'm opening the rooms and so strangely, oh, sorry. So right now I don't know how to do it because it's different. Maybe you can assign people. No. No.
Only you can assign people. Make 2 rooms and that is automatically.
I'm sorry.
I know. Usually I open them and it assigns people. And now it says that everyone is in a room. Like,
you know what the problem might be? The fact is that if you are doing the recording, it might interfere with this feature. Okay? So you even don't have the option, right?
Yeah, there is one room only, and that's it. And either I have to assign manually people into the rooms, or
so could you stop the recording just for this 5 minutes? Because it doesn't.
I will pause the recording and I will assign people into the rooms.
Okay, thank you.
Wonderful. Yeah, I am pausing. Okay.
And let's show those keywords. Okay. Do we have the keywords? Okay, we have the keywords. Let's try to reconstruct this biography as a group. Do I have someone who wants to start us off? By now you've all forgotten it. Sorry. Would you like me to read it again?
Oh,
No, not necessary. Okay.
No, it's not necessary. Yeah.
Who's going to start us off?
Okay, can I start?
Great.
Yes. Okay, Frank Lloyd Wright was a famous American architect.
Wonderful. Next.
He became famous, and his ideas spread around the world, especially after he built a famous building in Japan.
Okay, great.
If I'm not mistaken, he was born in Wisconsin, but I'm not sure about the year. It might be either 1867 or 1859. I'm not sure. So maybe somebody can help me.
Okay, anybody want to help with that? The year? Did anybody remember the year?
67.
1867.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, great, great.
And actually, he died in 1959.
Right, great. Okay, anything else? We have the word building blocks here. How does that fit into the biography?
Yeah, his toys in his childhood, building blocks, helped him to get interested in architecture, and plus to that, the nature of Wisconsin.
Okay, great. Anybody want to continue on?
So he was inspired by Wisconsin countryside, which is flat and which is full of greenery, and it was really very beautiful, and it is beautiful.
Okay, in the summer.
In the summer.
Okay.
But that's great that there are still 4 seasons, you know. Okay, so you have all this variety.
Right. Okay, great. And high school. Anybody have anything about high school you want to add?
So I think he went to the high school in medicine, but he did not graduate. You didn't mention why. It's a really interesting question. Why he didn't graduate?
I'm sorry, but
because his parents divorced.
Sorry,
Yes.
I missed. I just
his
missed.
father,
it.
yes, his father left the family, so he had nothing to do but to support the family. And as he had two younger sisters, so he had to help his mom out, right?
Oh, thank you so much. That's
No,
interesting.
that's great. That's great that you asked that question, because as a group, you've reconstructed meaning here, right? So that's wonderful. We see people jumping in and helping fill in the blanks. Very good. Anything else? Here's small, beautiful church, Chicago.
Well, in fact, this small, beautiful church was his first baby. And that's where his career started from.
Very good. Yeah. Home designs.
Yeah. Home designs and small,
That kind of
beautiful
works
church.
into what you've already.
So eventually he moved to Chicago, where he focused on home designs and on famous buildings.
Okay.
Which you can see most of them are located in the United States, but still there are some which are famous all over the world due to their spectacular architecture, I should say. And there was some information about the hotel right in Japan. Am I right about that? Again, I'm not quite sure, so maybe people will help
Okay.
with that.
What do you think, everybody? Is that the way you remember it?
Well, mostly.
Okay. Anything else you want to add there?
About the hotel that survived? Survived during the war, right?
No,
during the earthquake.
Earthquake, thank you.
Thanks.
Yes, great. Yeah, there was
another one more of his famous buildings is Guggenheim Museum in New York City.
Right. Okay. Okay. And anything else you want to add?
And today, young architects all around the world, they study on his buildings.
Okay, wonderful. Beautiful reconstruction. Very good. Okay, let's go back to the slides, if possible.
Yeah, I stop sharing and you start sharing.
Okay. Okay, that was great. Great job. And okay. Now what happened to my, let's see here. Okay, technical difficulties. What can you see? Anything?
No.
Marina, have you delegated the right to Sally back? The right to, yeah? There's this feature.
Okay. Okay, well done, very well done. And now I won't take too much time because you did such a great job with it. But if I were doing this with a class, depending on the level and depending on the reconstruction, I might read it again. But certainly I would ask them to read the bio. So here's the bio I read to you. I don't know how well you can see it. It's a 20-point font. This is a bio, a lower level, what we dubbed a lower level bio. Jean Kirschman wrote this bio and I wrote a higher level one. But I would ask the students to read the bio. Okay, or can I move to the second part? So I ask the students to read the bio, and then again, we debrief. So was there something that you read in the bio that you didn't hear in the oral reconstruction that you think should have been in the oral reconstruction? Or do you think that oral reconstruction was close enough? Any thoughts? As a teacher, I would be extremely happy with that oral reconstruction.
Well, surely our reconstruction lacked some factual details.
Well, it lacked some of the years, yes, which that's okay. In this type of act, maybe with the note taking, I would expect more dates. Definitely, I would expect. But with the listening, you got some of the dates in there, and you can get the dates later when you read it, because students will read this later. So they now have had listening, speaking, reading practice with this. Okay. Okay. Now, the third activity is called piecing the biography together. As I said, one of the reasons I like biographies is because they have transparent sections. And so if you can photocopy a biography and cut it into those sections, early life, childhood, education, young adult, career path, etc. If you can, you usually can see those sections. And if you cut it up and then divide your class, if possible, into the same number of sections as you have for the biography, then you break your class into pairs or groups and you give them a section. They sit together, they discuss it, they help each other understand it if there are questions, and then they get ready to not read it, retell it. So their job now is what the teacher did in that first activity. They're going to retell their section of the biography in chronological order. And I usually have them sit as a panel in front of the class, and I tell them not one person in your group is going to retell, you're going to take a turn retelling. And so, you know, okay, childhood, please come to the front. And those people go to the front and they retell the story of that person's childhood, and the listeners take notes. And you keep doing that until you get through the story, and listeners taking notes should ask questions if something is not clear to them. And then you have the students read the text afterwards, and again, debriefing. You know, was there something you didn't catch? Why do you think that is? Was it the pronunciation of the speaker? Was it the ear of the listener? Was it the attention of the listener? The debriefing section, depending on the level of your students, but with intermediate and advanced, that debriefing section is really important because then you can see what needs follow-up work. Finally, experts and researchers. And I like this activity because it allows for different levels. If you have higher level and lower level, and the experts, you don't tell them that, but they have the heavier language load and the researchers have a lighter one. In this activity, you divide the class into 2 groups, or if you have a big class, it could be 4 groups, as long as you have even groups, almost the same number of people for experts and same number for researchers. you put the experts off to a corner or whatever and tell them to talk quietly. And they read the biography together, they discuss it, they try to help one another understand it. While they're discussing it, you go over to the researchers, give them a list of keywords or phrases, events, and ask them to write questions based on these keywords. Tell them that they are going to interview. Their job is to learn more about this person, and they're going to interview an expert on this person to get that information. So they work together to build their interview questions. And as the teacher, I was going back and forth from each group to make sure they were on task. And then once they're ready, you have one-on-one if possible. So one interviewer meets with an expert and asks those interview questions, takes notes. And then I had the whole class discussion right after that and said, okay, what did you learn, interviewers? And they told us some things they'd learned. And then I would say, experts, do you think there are questions that should have been asked that weren't asked? Did they miss some key information? So the debriefing session. And then all the students read the biography. Okay, so these are 4 activities. Again, you just do one, but that help engage students. Students seem to think they were interesting activities. They were very focused on the activities, and they got practice with listening, speaking, reading. Now, if you want to have your students also practice writing, many things they could do. I'm sure you can think of many. Write a letter to the subject of the biography. Ask him or her questions that you'd like to know after reading that biography. You could find a picture of the subject, just like I showed you a picture of Frank Lloyd Wright. Ask students to write a physical description in paragraph 1 and a character description in paragraph 2, based on what they've read. Students could write an essay about what they consider this person's most admirable qualities. And of course, they should support their opinions with points from the biography. If you're working with a group of teachers, I say this person is going to a conference, or imagine that the subject of the biography is going to a conference or going to give a speech or receive an award, and you have been asked to introduce this person. Write your introduction. Okay, and I'm sure you can think of many more, but again, now we have listening, speaking, reading, writing, all accomplished by using that biography as a springboard or as the core of the activity. Okay. Well, maybe you just want to use a biography activity, but you might want to use a biography unit. And where do you begin? Maybe you want to make a whole unit, a week's study, 2 weeks study, a month's study, depending on how many times your classes meet. Well, where do you begin? First, find your biographical text. Choose a person whose life story connects with your students' interests or their academic majors. I mean, if you're teaching a group of architects, who better than Frank Lloyd Wright? Or your students' needs. Maybe they need to learn medical vocabulary. Well, choose a famous person in the medical field. Or with the course learning outcomes. What do they need to learn in this course? What kind of vocabulary and structures? Then you want to be sure to determine the reading level of the text, because if we grab them off the internet, grab them out of a book, we would probably have a better idea of the level, but on the internet, there's a lot on the internet. I'll give you some of those sites later, but they're all over the place as far as readability. So there are readability sites on the internet. There's one for you. You plug in the biography and it will tell you what level it is. Then you can think about the themes and topics in the biography and decide which ones to focus on. Stoller and Grabe are two people who've done a lot of work with content-based education, and they organize their units around themes. And they say topics are the detailed points that comprise the theme. So once you have your themes and topics pulled out, and sometimes there's more than one, so you can decide, how much you want to cover, formulate your linguistic and content objectives for the unit. What visuals, texts, tasks will you use to develop the theme and provide skills practice, and then decide on the best sequence for the materials and work on transitions from one activity to another. Okay. I'll try to go over this as efficiently as possible. This is a sample unit based on Frank Lloyd Wright. And there was so much that we could do with Frank Lloyd Wright, but for this English language teaching or English teaching forum article, I had to narrow it down to about 4 activities. But so the first activity was connected to Frank Lloyd Wright. So the students have done one of the activities we've just gone over. They've done one of the listening, speaking, reading, writing activities. And now, because we're turning this into a unit, they're doing more. And because it's Frank Lloyd Wright, we decided to have the students talk about types of building, learn about types of building. Now, depending on our level of students, maybe they knew this already. So it could be for any level or it could be skipped. So the content goal was for students to be able to identify different types of buildings according to their function, and to recognize vocabulary for buildings, and you have some vocabulary there. In addition, we wanted them to be able to define or explain or give examples of building types. So not just say it's a residential building, but what does residential building mean? And what does it usually look like? And are there examples in your neighborhood? And to exchange information using these structures. So a residential building is used to house people, etc. Okay, if you go to the link with the article, you will find this activity. You will find all the steps for this activity spelled out. Basically, what I did was have the students go back to the biography, pull out vocabulary that just fits this category, types of buildings. So they go back, they don't forget about Frank Lloyd Wright in his bio. They go back, pull out vocabulary. They add more of their own vocabulary that they can think of. I give them more vocabulary. They study it, then the next day they come back and I give them some of that vocabulary, and they work with a partner to decide how they would define this word, how they would explain it, and what kind of examples they could think of. And then they do a guessing type activity where they work with a new partner and start with a very general, this building, and they keep working down. They keep developing their description or their explanation until the person guesses what building they're talking about. So that's an example of one activity in the unit. And then we went on to describing buildings. So again, we go back to the Frank Lloyd Wright bio to see if we can find words that describe the buildings he made. We go over architectural features like the ones you see here. And then the activity for this is students, I give students pictures of buildings, and you want to give some pictures that are kind of similar but different. And together with their partner, they work to develop an oral description of the building. Then I put the pictures up around the room, tack them up around the room, put a number for each picture, and then each group gives their oral description without pointing or looking at their picture, and the listeners put down the number of the picture they think is being described. And then afterwards we check that. So the trick is finding pictures that have some of these architectural elements and pictures that are a little similar. So they have to be very specific, but not, but also different. So that was another type of activity used in a Frank Lloyd Wright unit. Now, Frank Lloyd Wright was very much known for his design of buildings to fit in their environment. And his School of Architecture is still going. And so for this, I wanted students to think about what we learned about Frank Lloyd Wright and how his houses were built with the Wisconsin countryside in mind. I also want them to practice using all the vocabulary that they've studied and to practice using expressions that express opinions. I wanted them to negotiate meaning. And then gave students, in this situation, I gave students pictures of landscapes. Oh, wait a minute, excuse me. Yes, gave pictures of landscapes and told the students that Frank Lloyd Wright has a school. It's true, he had a school. I believe that school is still functioning. And then I tell them he gives scholarships, that I'm not sure about. But in order to compete for a scholarship, they need to do a drawing that matches an environment and need to explain it before a panel. So I give them pictures of landscapes. They then sit side by, they sit with a partner in a small group and try to imagine. We're using multi-intelligence here, multiple intelligences here. Discuss, well, this landscape is hilly, so maybe we should do this or this. And it's kind of technical, but they come up with great ideas. And then they present it to the class, and the class votes on which one they think should get the scholarship. And finally, this one is a more, the fourth activity is a more, is a more traditional one in that it's bringing the whole unit together, and students are asked to research famous buildings or architectural marvels around the world, to choose one, to learn about it, to be able to tell us about it, to use as much specialized vocabulary as they can, to report on the building and also the architect if they can find anything. So that would be the final. This is a unit, which we would, depending on how many hours a week I've used this unit, we met for 4 hours every day, Monday through Friday. So we spent 4 days, I believe, 4 or 5 days. So 16 to 20 hours on this unit. So as you see, you can use biographies just for a one-time activity. You can use it for a unit. And if you're really ambitious, you can design a whole course around biographies. And the materials you see here are from a course. Hawaii Pacific University, where I taught for many years, I taught in the teacher training program, and I also taught I mean, I taught in the TESOL program. I also taught in the academic English program for students who wanted to go on and study at the university. But then we found students who were coming to the university and they were on a gap year, or they had a month off and they wanted to practice English. And they didn't need academic English. They wanted to just get fluency and a lot more vocabulary. So I was asked to design the curriculum, and with Jean and a couple of other teachers, we tried out a number of ideas and finally ended up with the biography-based units that we did 3 or 4 a month. And some of the most popular ones were Frank Lloyd Wright for architecture, S.D. Lauder, businesswoman, cosmetics, Milton Hershey, the candy maker, Hershey candy bars, and also a great philanthropist, and Wilma Rudolph, who suffered many childhood diseases and injuries and yet went on to win Olympic medals. And we chose people that that were famous enough that we could find materials on them, but not so famous that our students probably knew them or knew them well. And the course worked really well. So we got really positive feedbacks, especially students say, gosh, my fluency, the way I feel much more comfortable just talking. And so from that, all the materials you've just seen were developed. I was interested in seeing if there were other courses, so I did a little research and found that in Japan, there is, I believe he's an American teacher of English who started a course at Kanda University called Exploring the English-Speaking World Through Biography. And he started out by having his students write an autobiography. And then they researched and did activities on architects, artists, musicians, and poets, community, political, and spiritual leaders. And finally, I found a course at Murray State University in the US. I believe that's in Kentucky. It was a world, not an English class. These first two are English, ESL classes or EFL classes. This third one was not an English class per se. It was a world civilization course for university freshmen. And each unit in the course compared 2 figures whose stories depicted the ideas and socio-political issues of a certain historical period. The instructor for that course wrote all the biographies. Each biography was 4,000 words. So, but of course it was a freshman class. So it is possible to have a whole course if that's something that you think would work. Okay, so lots of resources online for biographies, and these should be hyperlinks when you go to the slides. If not, if you just put that name in, the site should come up. There are many others. I just put some of the ones that I thought were a little better. And interestingly, you can find things online like famous personages in Japan. An English teacher in Japan had his students research famous people in Japan and write their biographies, and he made a website of them. Here in Wisconsin, Wisconsin Public Television has created a whole series of biographies. Some people I didn't even know, even though I'm from Wisconsin, and teaching materials for teachers in Wisconsin. So there's lots of possibilities out there. Okay, so don't run away. Even though it's the questions, comments, ideas section, I would like to hear any questions or comments, and then don't run away because I wanted just a couple things I wanted to mention. But this is a time now. I'm sorry, I haven't been watching the chat box. Do we have questions?
Let me see. Yeah.
Do we have any questions here?
Mostly thanks. Like
Okay. Now don't run away. Don't say thank you and run away. It's just a few more minutes. I know it's a little after 12, but I'd like to wrap up with a couple of things. Any comments, ideas, thoughts?
Okay, Sally, thank you very much for very useful and wonderful seminar, very interesting azimuth for us to base our teaching on, because biography, this is always something that anchors in your memory quite well, and it is a very interesting platform for teaching different things, not only vocabulary, but also to train memory and to do different reading activities like scanning and skimming, which is also quite useful skill to develop, and listening also. Very nice platform, something that is underlooked, it seems to me, in English teaching practice nowadays. It's how to say, this is a classical format, this biography-based teaching, but in my teaching, for example, it has been underlooked. I don't know why. I'm going to refresh my ideas about biography-based teaching and implement it in my classes.
Well,
thank you very
much. And again, if you go to that link with the article, it has the activities step by step. And if for some reason you can't access that article, let me know. I can send it to you. I just wanted to make a couple of comments. You might say, why did she, it didn't work because you didn't go to breakout rooms, but why did she say tell birthdays? Well, for two reasons, maybe three. One is that the main reason is that we don't want one student to do all the talking in the group. We want everybody to try. And I always tell students, if you can't think of something, if you're getting, just say pass and then try to do it the next time. But we don't want one person to retell the whole biography. And so if you say, well, when is your birthday? It helps. In your groups, you have cohorts who move together. In my teaching, I have students that are with a new group of students every semester. So one way to get to know each other is, when is your birthday? And then by saying start at the beginning of the year, and if your birthday's in January, you start the reconstruction. They now know their partner's birthdays, and now they have an order to go for the reconstruction. And when they're telling their birthdays, they should say not just November 21st. No, they should say my birthday is November, or I was born on, which is part of the structure from the vocabulary, from the biography. So there are several reasons why I did that. Another reason, does anybody have a birthday today?
Not me.
No? Anybody have a birthday this week? No? Okay, well, I won't tell you what my other reason was.
Okay. And do you have your birthday today? No?
No, not till November, but thank you for asking. Okay, finally, because I don't have any other questions, comments, or ideas, I'll just, my question, I went online and I was doing a search, Ukrainian biographies. I came up with a couple of very long books, Stephen Bandera and one other, but I didn't come up with, well, it's not exactly true. I found an encyclopedia from Canada where I found some biographies, but it's an encyclopedia. It's not just biographies, it's much information. Are you familiar with any English language biographies of Ukrainians?
Not really.
Not really. You know, and it's undoubtedly partly because of, undoubtedly because of the war. Oops, what happened here? I was talking with a former colleague on Skype, and she was talking about TESOL Stus. So then I went searching for a biography because I wanted to learn more about him. I'm on Facebook, and recently I noticed a number of biographies being posted. And I think they're usually posted not in English, so I'm not sure how great the English translations are, but Yuri and Volodymyr were two, excuse me for just using their first names, but that were posted. I was reading a British paper, and the artist Maria Checo was posted. I was listening to Wisconsin Public Radio while eating breakfast. And they had this, here's a link, you can listen to it yourself, this podcast about this Ukrainian in the United States. And he's just composed the Odessa Suite. He's a pianist. And so I thought, well, there's some seeds for Ukrainian biographies. And then I found this encyclopedia from Canada that you can find some biographies, but again, it's not just biographies. So I guess I would throw out the idea, is there a need for Ukrainian biographies in English?
Sally, you can also add here Nikolai Leontovich, who created world famous Shedrik.
Okay, please, yeah. Okay, I'll write that down, or you can put it in chat. I guess my thought is this something, do Ukrainian teachers need to create a website like the Japanese teacher did? Do Ukrainian teachers want to form a group and try to make some kind of teacher resource with biographies and activities? Anyway, that's just my idea, my comment to throw out to you. And should anybody want to pursue that, I would be happy to work with you. So you could email me and say, hey, I like that idea. Can we start brainstorming? Who knows, maybe we could get somebody to publish it and it could be a teacher resource book. I can't make any promises, but just ideas. Any other questions, comments?
There is one question about Zirka Voronka. Nadia Cherkashina wanted to learn if she's still working.
Yeah, any ideas about where her whereabouts?
Oh yes, I have her address.
She used to live in Santa Rosa, I suppose. Or
No,
Santa Monica.
she was in New Jersey.
New Jersey, I see.
And she still is in New Jersey.
Great news, really.
She's no longer working.
Yeah,
she is a caregiver for her husband.
I see.
He is not well.
And
so she has been taking care of him.
Yeah, thank you very much.
You're welcome. I believe if you are on the TESOL Ukraine Facebook page, if you look at, I believe she's a member of that page. So you could message
okay,
her.
I'll contact her. Yeah, thank
and
you
LinkedIn.
very much.
She's on LinkedIn as well.
Okay, thanks.
You're welcome. And Anna, I don't know, can you put that name in the chat box, and I will write that name down that you would like to add to this list. And I only gave you this list because these are biographies that have, passed by my eyes recently. So I just thought I'd mention those to you. It seems like there's a Ukrainian Renaissance going on, and so maybe we need some more. We need some Ukrainian biographies. Okay, So Anna, I'll look for that name.
Mhm.
And then so Marina, if you want to leave that on until I get that. And then for the rest of you, thank you so much for coming. And I know I've gone over time. Thank you for staying if you could. And it's so great to see all of you. Know that you're in my thoughts and prayers. You have my email address. Any of you are welcome to send an email and just say hello if you want. Tell me what you're doing. Or if there's something I can send to you, I'd be happy to do that as well.
Thank you.
With that, I will say aloha and
Aloha.
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 Thank you, Sally. Thanks.
If I don't see you, I might see you at something that you're holding a lot of things these days, a lot of events. So if I don't see you, have a safe summer. And stay well and know that I'm thinking of you. And maybe I will see you, but my best thinking of you. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
It was great.
We'll have a safe summer. We'll try to, and we'll meet in September for the webinars by Ruslana Veselund and like this
living in Wisconsin.
Yeah, in Wisconsin. Yeah, and we already scheduled the first webinar on the 9th of September. So that is the day, the point when we all are going to meet again.
Okay, that sounds good. All right, and thank you, Marina, for your help.
My pleasure. You know, yes. So thank you so much. And for everyone who still needs a certificate, I will add Sally's presentation to the website. And for those who haven't attended the classes, the webinars of the series before, you may watch the webinars, write a short report and request your certificate. I will send it to you. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Oh, I have one last thing. It was one of my ideas. Sergey, you're welcome. I saw Sergey's comment here, Sergey Petrenko, and I remember him telling us about his, in that NAFSA, talking about his students going on to Wikipedia and correcting misinformation, disinformation, but that would also be a great place to have students, I mentioned making a website of fame, but they could also go to Wikipedia and actually put an entry in Wikipedia. So that idea of Sergey's to have students work with Wikipedia was a great one. So thank you, everyone.
Thank
Yes,
you.
thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sally. I just want to say that, yeah, Wikipedia is a great source, especially today, because now we can find the biographies of people and so on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and if they're not,
for example, if you're looking for some famous people, you can just first look at the Wikipedia, and then you can find some at least short information about that person.
Right, right. Okay, so thank you. Yes. And good to see my Vinnytsia colleagues. It's really because of their kindness that I became so involved with Ukraine. So thank you.
Thank you, Sally. We have very sweet memories of your stay here, and let's hope that there will be chances for us to meet again, right?
Right.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Looking forward to it.
Thanks a lot. Right.
Mm-hmm.
Bye-bye.
Bye now.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Bye, everybody. Bye-bye.
Aloha.
It was nice to see you. Bye.
Aloha.
Aloha. Aloha. Aloha.